Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5, Episode 7. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our special guest this week is Heidi Dutton, CEO of Lovingly Made, From Plant to Plating, an organization committed to delivering the highest quality, sustainable sourced plant protein ingredients for people, pets, and aquaculture. Sylvain, I know you have a soft spot, so to speak, for the great ag entrepreneurs from Saskatchewan, yeah?
Yeah, I do. And so I've been following Heidi's career for a while, and I was so glad that she accepted the position. And she's got a unique way of looking at the food sector. Mm-hmm. Very entrepreneurial, very rational, very strategic. So I certainly look forward to chatting with her, and she's in the plant-based space, and that space is often misunderstood, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of opportunities for innovation, and I think that Lovingly is doing a pretty good job, really looking at some of these opportunities over the next 5 to 10 years. So we'll chat about that.
Yeah, it was a great interview. I learned a lot, actually. Yeah. So it was really interesting for me. Now, your travels continue. I think you and I waved each other. I was on the deck cooking some ribs, and
exactly.
You were flying overhead, leaving Toronto.
Yeah.
What were you doing in Hogtown? Something about, what did you say, carbon border assessment mechanism? Is that a thing? What were you doing?
I was in Calgary, meeting with my good friends from MNP. If you don't know what MNP is the largest consulting firm in the agri-food sector in Canada. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They have thousands of employees, but they do have divisions. And I was actually meeting with all of the food and beverage and ag division together. So they typically actually have retreats for ag and a retreat for food and beverage. But this time they actually had both in the same room, and they invited me as a guest speaker to the group yesterday afternoon in Calgary. And so that was great. It was really awesome. I can't really say more than that because there's lots of, you do work in the private sector, Michael, as well. You understand that when you go into these meetings, there are a lot of things you can't say in public.
Yep.
But anyways, overall, great team. Love the attitude. They're out there helping clients all over the place, and when you talk about competitiveness, it's really music to their ears. They want to know more, and that's what our work is all about at the lab. But that yesterday, I also was testifying in Ottawa from Calgary remotely.
Oh, okay.
I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate that because it was my 23rd time. When you're in Ottawa and you're talking, you can connect with MPs, you can connect with the chair, you can make more of a point, but when you're behind a screen, you're talking to a bunch of people, it's just not the same thing. But I had no choice. They invited me on October 1st. I couldn't make it. The other day was October 8th, so I accepted. And yes, actually the session was about carbon taxes, and it was about border reciprocity. So in the EU right now, they are following a scheme called Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. It means that if you're trading with another nation around the world, you need to follow our rules around carbon sequestration or carbon management or carbon pricing, or else we're going to actually input a tariff on your products. In North America, for example, it would be like putting tariffs on carrots from Mexico, for example. Okay. Now, there's lots of talks about that right now in North America. Nothing is being done, so everyone's speculating. That's why yesterday was a bit weird, Michael, because often I'm asked to comment about a bill, comment about an issue.
A thing, yeah.
This was all hypothetical. And frankly, I mean, my point was pretty clear, and you can actually look at the video. It's online now. Tariffs will increase inflation no matter what. As soon as you put tariffs, you'll discourage countries to do business with you, and it will push prices higher, including food. So that's a no-brainer. And also, I did demonstrate to the committee how our sector, the agri-food sector, is becoming less competitive with higher wholesale prices. A lot of people are talking about retail prices, but did you know, Michael, that wholesale prices in Canada have increased 36.9% more than in the US in the last 5 years, which happens to be the year we started the carbon tax. So I'm not saying that the carbon tax is the main factor here, but something is going on in Canada that's not happening in the US. And the US, things are cheaper. So if you're Loblaw or Empire or Metro and you're looking for good deals, well, it's going to be harder to find good deals in Canada, and it's going to be easier to find good deals in America. That's the point I made to the committee. So we can talk about border reciprocity all day long, but right now we may not have a choice because we're less competitive.
Do you have a perspective about that same conversation for Europe, for the EU?
No, there's more consensus in the EU. Yeah.
But our wholesale prices, you mentioned a pretty big number that wholesale prices had increased. Do you have any sense? I
didn't look at the EU, to be honest. I only looked at the because the US is just an easy target for us. I mean, it's an easy place to go and buy stuff, and they're competitive, and so that's why I honestly I am concerned. I mean, if you ask me, the last 5 years, is the agri-food sector in Canada more competitive? Well, not according to the data provided by Statistics Canada. And when you compare that data with the federal St. Louis Reserve.
Now, you were in Toronto just on the way back home, so you weren't doing anything in Toronto?
I did have a bunch of meetings after all. And landed in Pearson. My phone was ringing, talked to a few people, had a meeting, ran into someone I know, and then I missed my flight.
What?
Yeah, I did.
Come on.
But there are flights every 2 hours going to Halifax, so it wasn't a big deal. I've missed my flights 3 or 4 times out of Pearson. And who doesn't love Pearson? Like, seriously, they should pay me. I should pay Pearson to actually spend more time there. They didn't have that piano guy, but... the Cake Boss machine, you saw that, right?
Yeah.
It's all there. It's great.
He's been Cake Boss. Not to take this on a tangent, but they actually opened up a big Cake Boss location in Mississauga, very close to me in Port Credit. And you and I were talking back there. We were trying to get an interview with Buddy Velasco.
That's right, yeah.
And we couldn't get an interview with him. We couldn't even get close to him.
Well, didn't he say yes and then he kind of ghosted you or something?
Well, the PR people said we're excited. The PR people were excited about it, but
they're all excited.
He wasn't. Well, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But they were like, yeah, we think this is a good idea. And they closed a month ago. Gone. They're gone. Didn't make it. So now the only place you could find his cakes are in vending machines. They're gone. So that didn't work out for him.
Would you buy a cake out of a vending machine?
I have, actually. When I'm coming back late at night, I do buy a piece of cake and bring it home, and for me and my wife to have as a late night kind of treat. And they're not bad. They're not bad, actually. They're not bad. Wow. They're replenished pretty often.
Do they actually turn the inventory there?
Yeah. It's surprising, right? I mean, it's a funny thing. It's a funny discussion, right? Because if you and I were having this discussion in like Japan, everything's in vending machines. And vending machines,
even in Europe, I mean, raw milk is in vending machines.
Vending machines are the answer to a lot of things, right? Like I was in the States, you can get who hasn't forgotten some kind of plug or connector for your phone or whatever? And there's vending machines.
Wouldn't you enjoy going, instead of going to a grocery store, you actually look at an ATM and you press a bunch of button to get your order, and then out comes your order of 25, 30 items that you need. Wouldn't that be nice?
I think it's called e-commerce, and they deliver it to your doorstep. So I think
you go to the grocery store and you just, Well,
that's it. One of the things I want to talk about next week, there's a big conference going on right now called Grocery Shop in the U.S. So I didn't go this year, but I've been connecting with people there. And Instacart is rolling out their big super cart with like it says where you are in the store and gives you offers where you are in the store, and it is self-checkout, right? So as you go, you scan it. And Sobeys and Empire Group has tried one of these before.
Right.
So it's really been a bit more of a solution than the kind of just walk out technology for grocery, right? Even though Amazon, by the way, I don't know if you keep a track, just hit the 50 mark in terms of Amazon Fresh. So Amazon now has 50 Amazon Fresh stores. What's a little funny about that is that we're even talking about it, because there's like 50 stores for Kroger and like a small neighborhood. So it's really nothing. It's very de minimis.
No, it's nothing. And I think they were expecting to open way more.
Well, you remember the days when they announced they're getting into grocery when they bought Whole Foods. The stocks collapsed for groceries. That's it. You're done. Amazon's going to come and, well, Amazon did not come and eat anybody's lunch.
Well, the ruling with between Kroger and Albertson is going to be interesting because if the judge ruled that, because they have to define what a grocer is. And if the judge says, well, it's a grocer buying another grocer, so we have to cancel that deal.
Yeah, that's
going to be interesting for Amazon because Amazon won't be considered a grocer, and they could start buying.
Interesting. It's kind of probably too much for the podcast.
I'm really waiting for that because that could actually have some major implications in Canada as well. If you can think of Amazon buying a bunch of companies, and I
don't think they ever will. All right, so that's your travels. Now you're back home for a while. Now you and I will be traveling. Well, you'll be traveling. I'll be traveling a little bit in November 14th at the Coffee Association's conference.
That's right.
If you're in the coffee business, we're a media sponsor of the pod. We're a media sponsor of the event. It's almost sold out. I was just seeing a note posted. So very popular.
Almost. Isn't it supposed to be sold out by now?
I think
it's a bigger venue.
It's a bigger venue. Yeah, they moved it up to up north, and it's a bigger venue. So I think if it was last year, it'd already been sold out. So anyway, run, don't walk. Get your tickets today. We'll put a link in the show notes.
I think
we'll be there doing
some
interviews. I think you're the one on stage. You and Mr. Chapman and Arlene Dickinson. And
I'm just part of the show.
And it's
they always have a good program though.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Now it's a big day today. We've been talking about we've been yammering on about a bunch of stuff, but we're bearing the lead, as kind of journalists would say. The big day has come today. The release of your all-new, drum roll, please. The release of the all-new Canadian Food Sentiment Index, a biannual insight report.
That's right.
You mentioned it last episode. It's now out as of today. First of all, tell the people what is it? Yeah, what is it? What's the process? What sentiment are you measuring? And what were your objectives for doing this report?
Well, I mean, as a retail expert, you probably are familiar with the Michigan State Consumer Sentiment Index, right? They actually publish one every month.
Yep.
It's been going on for years. It's cited by a lot of different people in the United States. Just to understand where consumers are at psychologically, if they feel good about themselves, that they actually want to spend more, because consumers play a big role in the economy. Well, Purdue University about 3 years ago decided to do the same, but for food. And I thought, geez, I wish I thought of that for them. And so I reached out to them and this summer or early spring and said, listen, you're on to something really interesting. We'd like to do that in Canada. And they said, sure, no problem. And so so we shared ideas and thoughts and designed our own questionnaire. So the idea of the index is to basically go back to field once every 6 months. Now, Purdue University does that every month, but frankly, when you look at results from month to month, there's not a whole lot of changes.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to be asking the same questions to 3,000 Canadians twice a year. So
and who's the we in that sentence? Because I think it's our friends at Cattle, right?
Cattle is our supporter. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
And so it's been great to work with Cattle, and they appreciate it. Instead of actually releasing these mini reports, you remember every now and then we had reports on different issues. Well, Colleen is doing that for our podcast now, and thought maybe we should actually have something more longitudinal. A survey is a picture in time. An index will give you trends, will give you a sense of where people are at or how things are progressing in terms of consumer beliefs, values, trust, behavior, all of these things. And so we start with a dashboard, explaining to people how much money is spent right now per capita, service, retail, what's the split, the food insecurity level, all of that stuff we actually capture on a dashboard. And then we move into comparing how people see organics. Are people composting? Are they cleaning their produce before eating them? I mean, those simple things, because the Purdue University really used one instrument that I really like to understand how people see risks in their lives, or how people see inflation. Is inflation impacting behavior? Well, with this particular report, we're going to know more about how people feel about inflation, and also how people feel about inflation data coming from StatScan. And let me tell you, did you see the results? People don't believe StatScan.
Yeah.
Like, not at all.
Well, food value, you asked this great question, which would be so great to track it over time. What's the importance of factors in food purchase? Number one, affordability, 47%. At the other end of the scale, environmental impact, pretty meaningless to people, 2.5%. Social responsibility, 3%. Yep. Now, does this tell us, I guess we'll see, if economic times are tougher, those things become less important, and
exactly. With the index over time, we'll know whether or not these factors actually gain in importance or remain irrelevant. And so I wasn't surprised that affordability was the big factor, and then after that, it's nutrition. But it's the gap. You know, it's huge. Gaps are going to be interesting.
Yeah. Now, on consumer behaviors, you rank them, I think, on an index out of 5.
Yeah. The medium is 3.
Okay, medium's 3. So if it's a 3 or more, it's more often or always, right?
That's right.
Am I articulating that right?
Yeah, sort of.
I'm just looking at the chart now, and I see value-based behaviors. Choose plant-based proteins over animal proteins, 2.43, so that's less often.
So it means that the majority of Canadians don't feel too strongly about that statement.
Okay. Choose local over non-local, 3.17. So if they feel more strongly about local, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Did you notice that we actually estimate that Canada is home to more than 800 vegans now? 800,000?
800,000 vegans, yeah. You've always wondered, and this is great because you've always wondered how big a community that is, right?
That's right.
What are they buying?
Every 6 months, we're going to measure how many. And of course, there is a margin of error. And so,
anything surprise you? We'll put a link to the whole study. Anything surprise you in the study? Anything come up?
Here's my take about the dashboard. I think something fundamental is happening in Canada. And you saw the news today about Saint-Hubert in Quebec realigning its menu prices,
I was going to ask
freezing
you about that,
prices for a bunch of staples like chicken, for example.
Yep.
Reducing prices for desserts and things like that. Saint-Hubert wants people back in dining rooms, basically, and I think that is a symptom to a much broader issue happening in Canada. And when you look at the amount of money being spent retail versus service, that's when you see there's a problem. Because retail, the line is just not moving, despite higher prices. That line is supposed to go up with inflation. It's not, per capita. Food service, we're almost at a record high. Record high. So I don't know how you read that, Michael, but my guess is that you have two food economies in Canada rising. You have the food economy for the wealthy and the food economy for the less affluent. The wealthy will actually, go to restaurants, and the tablecloth sector will cater to businesses, of course. You'll have fast food. Fast food is doing incredibly well because of the frugality of the market. But it's the middle class, the casual dining sector. That
would you put Saint Hubert in that sector?
That's right. The after-tax business, family casual dining, the middle class. You need a strong middle class to support a chain like that. And to me, this particular study shows that the middle class is slowly eroding, and there's no wealth being created, especially for the middle class, millennials in particular.
Yeah, interesting.
What do you think?
Well, Richard Schofield, the president of Saint Hubert, was quoted in the article. We'll put a link into it. It's a great article in La Place, and he just said, listen, we're looking at the data and everybody's skipping on all the things around the plate. So we're going to freeze prices on the mains and drop them around the plate because people are clearly struggling. They're still coming to the restaurant, but they're cutting way back. I think you've nailed it.
I think that's a big problem. And can Saint-Hubert solve that problem? Of course not. It's it's bigger than them.
Yeah.
But Saint-Hubert is an emblem. I mean, it's just it's an institution in Quebec. So that's why I think a lot of people. I gave 3-4 interviews today about that topic. Just
people pay attention to what they do for sure. They're a great operator.
Are saying, well, people aren't dining out. Well, it's true. People are dining in. They're not. They're avoiding the tips. They're avoiding the expensive bottle of wine. And so that's what's saving Saint-Hubert, because they're the kings of delivery. They've been delivering food forever with these yellow cars, If you're in Quebec, you'll see those yellow cars with a red tail on top. So that's their signature. They do it very well, but you make money when you have people in your dining room.
One last thing, consumer trusts. Good news for the farmers, not good news for major grocers.
No. Well, were you surprised by that?
No. Not at all. No.
Well, I was surprised by the differences. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference. Farmers are at $3.86, and major grocers are at $2.80, which is not. It's lower, but it's not that low. And what really was shocking to me were independent grocers. I don't think consumers see a difference.
No, I mean the data. To be precise, it's 2.8 for major grocers and 2.89. That is a bit surprising.
So, anyways, so that was interesting, and of course, over time, it'll be interesting to see how things move around with those factors.
Tell me about the level of indifference metric. So, what are you getting at there? Because Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada ranks 10.8% and major grocers 3.1%. Health Canada just above that at
that's the I don't know.
What are we measuring there?
That's the I don't knows. Like I don't know. I don't know. And frankly, we put it there because we wanted people because indifference sucks. I mean, I don't know. It's probably the one sentiment that I hate the most in the world. If you're indifferent about something, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do? And so some federal agencies have a problem. Maybe they won't see this as a problem. I mean, maybe they don't want people.
Maybe they don't want to be thought of. Yeah. Maybe they don't
exactly.
want to be thought of. Now, so this is biannual. So the next one will be next year, I guess. Right?
Yeah. So actually in April.
So spring
October,
2025.
April.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And of course, we've got
in between, we have Canada's Food Price Report.
That'll be coming up in
this year is our 15th edition.
1.5, fantastic. Yeah. And we'll have Cattle will be back on the show. Colleen will be back on the show. We're deep diving into one of those elements in the sentiment, which is how much do you care and make decisions about sustainability when you shop for groceries.
Yep, exactly.
Trying to get at that, tell us what you really think versus tell us what you think you should put down.
With surveys, it's tough, but
Just before we get to our interview with Heidi. From Lovingly Made, and you mentioned it, so let's bring it up now. Big weekend coming up, Thanksgiving weekend. My chance to eat turkey. As you know, I'm a big fan.
You like turkey, right? You're a turkey household, yeah.
Well, I don't know about household. I love it way more than my wife does. That's a whole other thing. I cook it all kinds of different ways, but one thing in this house... But you cook
for not just your household, you cook for the family, right?
That's true. And the family requests on Thanksgiving, I make a traditional turkey. No messing around. No messing around. No mayo, no brining, no nothing. It's a traditional turkey, which is still delicious. Now, you mentioned... a basket of goods. The turkey was fairly priced. I mean, the release you had, your talking points was, food prices have gone up, but there's some opportunities around the table. Talk about what you're
pretty
finding.
Pretty much. Honestly, I was shocked. Like prices from October 4th to October 9th, I saw really cheap turkey nationwide. When it comes like with stuffing. If you don't want to make your own, there's cheap stuffing out there, cheap cranberries in a can, gravy under $1 in a can. you really can feel the pressure. I really think that grocers are using Thanksgiving as an opportunity to build loyalty again. They saw a lot of people move around. They became nomads, but they want their customer back. And so you need an event like the Super Bowl or the holidays, and of course Thanksgiving. So I was, but of course they are. When you look at prices, they are things that you need to avoid. So the produce section is actually pretty good this year. About 15. We actually calculated that about 15 very popular items at Thanksgiving are cheaper if they're Canadian than imported. Like carrots, onions.
Wow, that's
squash.
Great news.
Yeah, it's great news. Harvest was great. But where you need to be a little bit more careful for bakers out there, eggs are more expensive, sugar is more expensive, flour is more expensive than last year, and bakery. Bread rolls, yeah, it's more expensive than last year. And dairy, of course. Dairy is more expensive, about 3-4%, depending on the product that you're looking at. But mainly, like butter is more expensive, so you got to be careful in the dairy section.
All right. Well, there you go. So you can put a table together, and then let's hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, because we'll be talking to you again after Thanksgiving. All right. Well, on that note, let's take a break. Let's hear from our great sports sponsor, Cattle. And let's talk
Cattle
to Heidi.
And Heidi.
Let's go to Saskatchewan. All right. Here we go. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer, while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com. Heidi, welcome to The Food Professor podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing awesome. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Excellent. Hey, where are we finding you today? There's some talk about either Calgary or Saskatoon, but I think you're in Saskatchewan, yeah?
I'm in Saskatchewan today, and I woke up to a frost, so welcome to the fall.
Hey, well, listen, Thanksgiving, you were recording this early October. Thanksgiving is very early this year, so this is why when I explained to the Americans why our Thanksgiving is so different, that's why, early frost. Different weather pattern.
I wouldn't say the frost was early. Right. It was just really the first one.
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
Earlier than America.
And Heidi, just so you know, I used to live in Saskatchewan with my family for 6 years, so I'm very familiar with the Saskatchewan weather for sure.
Oh, well, you know what? It gives us lots to talk about, and that's interesting. I never knew that about you.
There you go.
There you go.
And Sylvain has often spoken so highly of the Saskatchewan work effort and work ethic and industrialness and entrepreneurship. So really excited to have you on the podcast. But let's start at the beginning. Who are you? And what do you do for a living? And how did you get to be you?
Okay, so my name is Heidi. And I started my career as a specialty crop merchant, which is essentially I was trading specialty crops. And we started setting up markets because the company I was working for at the time was doing mostly domestic trade. And I had this idea that we should do international trade. So I went around setting up markets, started in Europe, went to South America. We set up markets in India, Pakistan, throughout different parts of Asia, the Middle East, and China. Kind of went around the globe, setting up distributions, sales, and that grew quite nicely. And then we ran out of capacity, so we built another production facility. And then we ran out of capacity again, and we're doing quite well. And a company by the name of Topher, which was ADM's trading arm based out of Germany. They would have been one of the oldest and largest trading companies out of Germany. They acquired us. And so I stayed there for a couple of years post the acquisition. And then I started trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I'd read a book called The China Study by Colin Campbell, and that inspired me on a plant-based journey. So that would be really, if you want to say, the TSN turning point.
Right, the epiphany. Now, how did you? Yeah, you kind of jump started way ahead into being this market maker, but were you always in agriculture? Like, what's your background? Were you always interested in business? Like, how did you get into that line of work or conceive of that?
Oh, you want to go even further back?
A little bit. We probably don't want to go to JK or kindergarten, but I'm curious as to how you wound up doing what you do.
I was born and raised on a farm about 2 hours outside of Saskatoon. I grew up.
By the way, 3 of my kids were born in Saskatchewan. So there you go.
We're claiming them.
Exactly.
They're ours. We're claiming them. I really liked agriculture, and my parents were pea growers, and they were involved in the seed business, and they also had cleaning plants. And my mom was always involved in trade and working. She worked as a general manager and as a merchant in a business that she owned as well. And so I watched her, and at the time that she was doing it, I don't think there were, maybe you could count on your hands how many women across the country were doing it. And so she was a real trailblazer. So I got to watch her. And I think I took a lot of the inspiration from that to then head down this path myself.
Interesting. Now for an Easterner like myself, when you say you're trading and setting up markets, you just chalk that field or unpack that a little bit for the listeners and me. What does that actually mean? You're not sitting behind a desk saying, I'll sell you 5 gold bars of orange juice. Like what it sounds like you're in production and movement of physical goods. Just in like a minute, what does making a market look like?
So we have to go back a bit, because at this juncture, the internet is really at its infancy. We're still using fax machines. Blackberries are just coming out. So at that point in time, that meant getting on an airplane, going over and knocking on doors and figuring out who your partners are going to be in each of these markets to take your peas, your lentils, or your mustard seeds from Saskatchewan and get it all the way into those different markets, right? You could be selling into Karachi, Pakistan, or you could be going into Qingdao in China. So you have to have partners on the other end that are not only your customers, but are going to cooperate.
Now, in this model, do you represent farmers, or is it your crop that you're marketing?
It's crop that's usually been accumulated from a bunch of different growers, put through a primary processing so that it can be exported and then exported.
Ready to be shipped.
Essentially, yes. Yeah. And then, we did some bulk vessel, but a lot of it was containerized movements.
Let's talk about Lovingly Made. So you've given some inspiration. You read a book about plant-based. What is Lovingly Made? And tell us more about that.
So what we do at Lovingly Made is we take a pea, a faba bean, or a lentil, and we turn it into a texturized product, which for the most part is used in either plant-based meat substitutes or is used in meats as a meat extender. So we take essentially a crop that's highly sustainable. We process it as efficiently as we can, and we make these end products that are really a good value statement to both the end customer as well as to, like I said, traditional meat users.
And that's the connection back to reading this book, that plant-based could be something. And so what are the challenges of that? Compare your, past experience to your current experience. Are there anything very unique? Sylvain and I often talk about the dynamic consumer appetite for plant-based products, but what's the complexities in your part of the business?
So the business has evolved and changed, and it changes as consumers change. So right now, the way we see consumers going to, I'll pick on Costco, going to Costco and paying $15 a kg for ground beef. And so when we think about plant-based now, we look at a problem like that where consumers' budgets are strapped, disposable income is not as fluid as it once was, and we can take that product and lower the cost to the consumer we can offer a sustainable solution that's better priced and be just as yummy as that consumer wants it to be. And so that's really where we see plant-based growing over the next, I would say, probably 4 to 5 years, is taking the traditional meat market and looking at it and saying, how can we make a better solution for consumers that is more sustainable, more cost affordable, and is also, I'll pick on soccer moms, no offense to the soccer dads. There's lots of them. My husband is awesome. He's a soccer dad, but that back of package experience that we want people to have is positive. So when you take that, ground beef moment and you flip over that package and you say, okay, it's got ground beef and it's got peas in it. That is a wholesome experience for the consumer, as well as it can lower their costs. And so when we talk about plant-based, we're seeing, I would say, a shift from it used to be, okay, we only supply plant-based brands, that's where we fit, to how can we make a difference?
Binary equation, one or the other.
Yeah, and I don't look at it that way. So if we really want to make a difference in sustainability and we want to make a difference in how much carbon we're emitting, and we want to do all of these things and reduce fertilizer usage, we can really make a difference in the world if we look at it from a point of, can 1% of the ground beef have peas in it?
Thank you so much. Proteins are not a zero-sum game.
I love the way you describe it as proteins. Hey, one quick question, then I'll pass the mic to Sylvain. I know pet food is a big category for all kinds of inputs as you're describing. Do you play in that category as well?
Yeah, we do. Our protein plant does a lot of base ingredients for different types of pet foods, and they're used readily. We see the pet food market using the fibers, the starches, the proteins. And I think that that's really important because you go back to the efficiency of a pea and or a faba bean. And we can really make meaningful progress in terms of getting them sustainable products at great prices.
It's such an interesting market because, in my hands right now, I have a big dog. I'm holding his treats and they're human grade, non-GMO, USDA organic. I mean, it's like every now and then late at night, I've considered snacking on them myself. So it's really an interesting gluten-free. Like it's for my dog, right?
His food is more certain than the food that you eat.
It is. It's got a very clean ingredient deck. This dog food.
And a lot of us feed our dogs at times better than we do ourselves. And we love them, and it's like this bond. They're like members of our family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was actually on a plane this morning, and the person next to me had a dog.
Yeah,
2 seats for the dog. The dog had more space than I did.
That's awesome.
I know.
That's awesome.
And the pet was cute. So, anyways, I didn't criticize or anything. I kind of pet him for a while too. So,
well
flight entertainment.
Well done.
So you're trying to follow the consumer. I suspect it's pretty difficult right now to do that. How do you follow the bouncing ball from a market perspective? Your product development process, how does it look like at Lovingly Made?
We try a lot of things, and we try to fail fast. So, and what I mean by that is if you have a product, and food experiences, as you know, they're really individual. So one product might be too crunchy, one might be too hard. So we'll go back and forth as quickly as we can, because anytime things slow down, and we're not a huge company, so anytime that process slows down, it's just more costly. So we tend to go through prototypes and that development process at a very rapid rate, and I would say it's one of our advantages. So we'll take a look at a prototype, and we'll usually have a really good idea, I would say, within a couple of weeks, if that's going to be viable.
Really?
And a lot of
Wow.
what we're doing is we're cooperating directly with end users. And we also have a really robust group of talented people with a ton of experience in both plant-based and have experience in meat-based products that allow us to go through that quickly.
With sound judgment, educated judgment.
Yeah, they're the science team that we have is really quite amazing, and have a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge in terms of how do we make this taste good, how do we get this into a formulation, and what's going to win for this end user, because we're business to business. So we spend most of our time trying to formulate solutions for food companies, which move generally much slower than we do. And so, I'll pick on one example that we had recently. It was a new product. It's headed into Costco, and we had given the client a prototype, and we had about 60 days to go from prototype to first PO to deliver.
I must say, 60 days seems really, really short.
It was.
Oh my goodness!
It was, and
that's
was
crazy.
Was that imposed on yourselves, or was your client asking for this?
A bit of both, because what happens is we have all these different SKUs that we've developed that are sitting, if you want to say, in the wings, that have to go through a scale-up phase. So, we might have, 30 different products that we've developed, but we're not sure exactly where they're going to fit, but they've only had, let's say maybe a couple of hours of runtime, where we really would want many more hours of runtime. And so that gives us a large arsenal for a product developer to say, what do you have that might be close to what I need? And so we'll have small samples of those ready to go to try and speed up that process for them.
That's pretty impressive. Do you, in that process, do you work with farmers, your suppliers, in terms of design and traits and things like that? Do you go as far as that?
There's been a really big movement in the whole seed development area in terms of we want to develop.
Lots of money being invested too.
We want to develop novel traits. And so I would say in some cases, yes, but in general, no. Okay. And the reason I would say that is what people don't. Sorry, my dad is calling me. I have to pause this and shut my phone on mute.
No problem.
You can delete that, or you can leave it in there.
No, you can talk to your dad if you need to.
Yeah. No, I don't. Trust me, if they need me, 6 other phone calls are going to come in.
Yeah.
So now I've lost my train of thought. I'm really sorry.
I'm asking. So I asked the question about supply chains and involving yourself with farmers and breeding and traits.
Okay. We work directly with farmers to make sure that we have the right stocks, the right quality coming in. However, having grown up on a farm and working with farmers, there's been this really big movement to developing specific traits and trait specific. There's both. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, because in order for the farms to be efficient, they really need to work with one variety. And so we focus on, can we pick the variety that's going to work the best with the grower, and what manipulations can we make on our end to make that work? And, this concept of having a bunch of different traits that are all the way through, you really have to balance that investment with what can be mechanically done. And, in the pea sector, we've talked about having all these high protein peas, which is great and awesome, but does it come at a yield drag? Right. And I can mechanically raise the protein level. So you have to balance off that investment that is made to get that variety, and also with the return that the farmer's going to get. Because if we have a yield drag, the farmer's not going to be interested in it. And as these farms get larger and larger, it gets harder for growers to have 3 different varieties of yellow peas on their farm.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a romanticized view of all of this, but at the end of the day, it's got to make financial sense for our partners.
But do you think that Lovingly Made is really bringing home an opportunity for farmers? And do you think that farmers are really recognizing that right now?
100% they do. When we look at some of the work that we're doing in faba beans, we would be one of the largest users of faba beans in Saskatchewan and in Alberta as well. Wow. When we're going into value-added markets, where growers have an opportunity, if they grow a good quality, they have an opportunity to sell at a premium price.
Mm-hmm. Last question before I send it back to Michael. So the consumer, okay, what do you expect from the consumer over the next, say, 5 years from now? Because right now, what I see is a bit of a confused marketplace, because of price points, because of the noise around nutrition, clean labeling, all that stuff. Are we going to come out of that cloud at some point over the next 5 years?
I think consumers over the next 5 years are going to be focused much more on economics than what we've seen them in the previous 10 years. So I think we're going to see consumers going back to a point where they want to talk about, what is the value? How much is it costing me to feed my family? And while food inflation has slowed down, and this is maybe a good question for you, my gut is the amount of money Canadians are spending on food as a portion of their disposable income is much larger now than what it was 5 years ago.
It's actually, we did ask ourselves that same question as a lab. I think it was about a year ago. Mike, I think you and I spoke about this on the show, and we didn't see a difference. It's just people are trading down, Heidi. And so they're spending less on food. They're just being very careful. They're more frugal about the dollars they spend at the grocery store. That has changed. And they're spending more on other items like housing, for example.
Yeah, and I don't see that trend going away very quickly.
Me neither. Over the short term, absolutely. I think you're right. Yeah.
So I think we as ingredient suppliers, being a part of the food chain, we need to go to the consumer packaged good companies with solutions that are nutritious and that offer cost savings. So when the consumer goes for that experience, when they want to buy, their ground beef or their plant-based burger, whatever their choice is, they don't feel like they have to compromise on quality and that they don't feel like they're compromising on price.
Nice. So they get both nutrition and priced right. Beautiful, and that's going to be a great selling point. Let's change gears. Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about how you lead and how you think about innovation. It's a question I love, Sylvain, and I love asking people is, when you think about innovation, what does innovation look like for Lovingly Made, and how do you approach it? At the beginning of the year, do you sketch out a whiteboard? Is it constantly contacting your customers, ask them telling what you need, and what percentage of that is like, you don't know you want this, but trust me, you're going to want this. Just talk about it, what innovation looks like.
So for us, innovation is constantly moving. And I spoke a little bit about this earlier, and it's the speed. So when we think about innovation, we're plugging into our customers and we're trying to cycle that as quickly as we can. When we think about what would work, what new product should we focus on next, we're probably having conversations about this on a monthly basis. And yes, we have a budget because at the beginning of the year that we're probably updating about quarterly. In terms of what we're doing and what we're focusing on, we're going through that on a monthly basis.
Like how many at-bats would you, like 10 to 1, like how many at-bats would you do before you have a product that you actually take through to, to final?
Like 300, 400.
Oh, is it 10 to 1? Is it 5 to 1? Is it like 50 to 1? Like I'm trying to get a sense of order of magnitude in your line of work.
That's a really good question. Yeah. My gut says it's probably somewhere between 1 to 20 to 1 to 50.
Yeah.
And there is products that obviously we work on, and we thought we were geniuses when we came up with the idea. And after we've been through a few cycles of it, we're like, well, that just wasn't what we thought it was going to be. So we're going to abandon ship on that project. But it's probably in that 1 to 30. It probably takes 30 iterations to get a product to the point where it's ready to have a good discussion about. And that iteration can be when you're sitting with a customer and you've got 6 or 7 different SKUs for them to start looking at and saying which one of these SKUs will work the best, which one's going to give you the mouthfeel that you want, which one's, how do you want your bite to feel? So each of those are different SKUs. And some projects happen quite quickly where you're only dealing with less than 10 SKUs. And like I said, then you'll have others where, it feels like you've done 100 and you don't feel a whole lot closer to the final solution than where you're at. But the big thing about innovation, I would say, is I'm rereading a book right now by Adam Grant called Rethink. And it's that constant reassessing, is this what the consumer wants? Is this going to create value for them? And because if you're going to create value for someone, you need to do it at the right price. You need to do it at the right time.
Yeah, you can't be too early. Like I was going to say, a lot of sometimes innovation just happens too early, right? You're too far ahead of the market.
But we know, because you asked a batting question, and it got me to think about failures in the market. And I know, Heidi, I'm sure we've seen some really, really bad products out there. And we've invited consumers to taste these bad products, and they just walked away from the category. Do you think there's going to be a legacy to that, or do you think we're able to get them back into the fold? What do you think?
I think as budgets get tighter in Canadian homes and in consumer homes in general, people try less things. They tend to stick more to their knitting per se. So yes, I think people will try them again, but they're less likely to. If you've tasted some of the I'm going to pick on jerky, some of the plant-based jerky that came out, some of it was terrible. I got it in my stocking for Christmas from my mom, who was meaning all of the right things.
You
Give me
hated
coal
her.
next time. Give me some coal next time. It'd be more tasty or something in it. It's a fascinating question, because it's like rampant excessive innovation can actually have a deleterious effect on moving the market forward. So that's a
the first mover strategy sometimes can be damaging for everyone.
Well, we had this almost like a bit of a perfect storm. We had low interest rates. We had a lot of momentum in the plant-based industry.
A lot of venture capital money, right? A lot of 100%. Venture capital looking for a home and not looking for a business plan that said profit for a few years, right?
No, you had people, holding up. I think if you held up the flag and said you're a plant-based, someone was going to throw money at you.
Right.
Now it's not that way. Interest rates are much higher. We have P&Ls just that we have to answer to. Money is much more expensive, and there's much more discipline that's coming into the industry, which I think is healthy, because in those days you ended up with all these products, like I said, that just because they slapped plant-based on it, people are going to buy it, and it's like, but you need a repeat customer to make any money.
It's got to actually be good. And all those things. Listen, last question for you. You've been an entrepreneur for many years. What's your advice
There's
to people?
No French word for entrepreneur, Mike.
It feels like I wouldn't be able to pronounce it today anyway. You've been doing this for many, many years. What's your advice, kind of the 2 things you need to do to be successful as an entrepreneur in this food category and the category you're in, or just beyond? What's that formula? I don't know if there's a formula, but what's your advice?
So first, I think you have to drop the number of many's you say in the many, many years, because now I'm feeling quite old. My advice, for a long time, I thought that I must be doing something wrong because I would have all of these challenges. And I would look around at other business owners and entrepreneurs and think, holy crow, they must have They must have it all figured out. And then I read a book called Shoe Dog.
Oh, yeah, but Nike. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I read it, and I had this moment of...
Moment of clarity.
1,000%.
Yeah.
It was like, I am normal.
Oh, my God, this is hard for everybody. This is hard.
That's exactly it. And so I think the advice I would tell people is there's no part of it that is easy. And some days there's no part of it that is fun. But it's worth it. And that the easy things are in life are the things that are generally not worth it.
Well, fantastic wisdom. And Heidi, thanks so much for joining us on the Food Professor podcast. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, talk about your company, your products, or just connect with you on LinkedIn as a savvy entrepreneur, how do they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Heidi Dutton, or they can visit us at our website, lovinglymade.ca.
All right, fantastic. Well, once again, on behalf of Sylvain and I, thanks so much for joining us on the pod. Real treat to chat
great.
with you, and great discussion around entrepreneurship and innovation. So thanks for making some time to talk to us.
Thank you both. I think the work that you do is amazing.
Let's stick with the restaurant business a little bit. Allergy-friendly restaurants. What got you thinking about handling allergies? I mean, it's interesting because my daughter went to Japan and she's allergic to shellfish, and they put it on everywhere, and she had a terrible time. So it's very front and forward in my mind about allergies. And I think the opportunity, which is what came out in the survey, the opportunity to serve people with the right attitude towards how to
if you make it explicit, right? Absolutely. So Food Allergy Canada, great organization. They came out this week with a great report for the food service industry. As explained in our in the Canadian Sentiment Food Sentiment Index, 37% of our food lives we spend at the restaurant. So of course the restaurant is a big deal. And if you talk to anyone with allergies or know someone with allergies, it's a nightmare going out. And so the message coming out of the report is, if you are explicit about it, if you're clear about the fact that you're making your restaurant safe, well, you're likely going to increase your business. And I thought it was a brilliant message, brilliant. And of course, restaurant operators are looking to bring people back out as much as possible. Yep. And frankly, it's like the plant-based thing. If you don't put a plant-based item on your menu, you lose a lot of people, because it's not all people are vegans or are people that don't eat meat. But if you take out one option, if you take out one person, you take out a lot of people at the same time. So, and I think it's the silent competitor for restaurant operators, right? Yep. You don't see it. People won't tell you.
They just won't come.
It's going to cost you.
Yeah, they just won't come.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Good survey.
So great report. I encourage people to actually go on the Food Allergy Canada website to find the great report, and encourage your favorite restaurant operators to follow some really interesting tips there.
Let's talk quickly about Couche-Tard. So it looks like there is some negotiating going on. They have upped their bid, So people are saying. The great one of our first interviews, actually back to the early podcast, David Marcotte from Cantor. There's nobody smarter about this stuff than David, and he thinks the deal is going to go through for a big part of the business. There's other parts of the business that might be a little more problematic, but he's, I would say, optimistic. Are you hearing anything about it from Montreal? I mean, Couche-Tard's probably going to be pretty tight-lipped, but what's the... Do you detect some optimism that this is going to happen? I mean, I think back to when they made it
on the podcast. I think the deal is going to happen. Yeah. But how the deal will be, what kind of oversight we'll see over the deal from a regulatory perspective, that's going to be interesting. I think November 7th is going to be a really important factor, who's going to win the White House and how protectionist the U.S. wants to be. Because it depends of who wins, right? And because Americans will set the tone for the rest of the world, and so I think it's a wait and see thing. And I suspect that Couche-Tard is playing that long game. And they're dealing with the Japanese. You got to be, anybody who's done business in Asia and Japan.
It's a long game.
You just can't show up and say, let's make a deal. It doesn't work that way. So there's some courting going on. I see it as courting.
Yeah.
So Seven
fair.
and I, they basically rejected the deal, knowing that there's going to be another deal.
Yeah.
This deal is likely going to be rejected, but my guess another one will be coming, and that's how they're courting.
All right. Well, listen, this great wrap on the news, and let's hope for the folks in Couche-Tard in Montreal. It'd be amazing if that deal went through. That's going to literally rewire the convenience store, and convenience store is a hotbed of innovation right now. So,
absolutely.
Another great episode in the can, so to speak. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. If you're listening to this on Thursday, take and enjoy time with family or friends or whatever you happen to do. I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, media entrepreneur, and you are?
Gobble, gobble. The food professor. Take care, guys.